Folks, thank you again for tuning in. It's about 12:01. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to go through some introductions first, and then we'll get into the presentation and we'll hold questions and answers, question and answer session for right after the presentation. But first, we'd like to introduce Aerial Armor. This is the Aerial Armor Security Solutions Drone Intrusions webinar hosted by the Texas Deer Association and the company Aerial Armor. With us today, we have a couple of folks from the company. Paul, why don't you start, give an introduction, and then introduce your team as well.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Yes. Hi. My name is Paul Ankeny. I'm with Aerial Armor. My colleague Josh Strange will be doing the actual seminar, and I have also on the line Jeremy as well. And I will now turn the mic over to Josh, and we can get started. And again, thank you for attending. We really appreciate it. Look forward to answering all your questions.
Absolutely. My name is Josh Strange. I am the Sales and Marketing Manager here at Aerial Armor. Pleasure to be meeting with you all. And again, thank you to the Texas Deer Association for coordinating this meeting for all of us. So a brief intro into our presentation. I'd like to take a moment to explain Aerial Armor's roots, how we got in the industry, and who we are. Aerial Armor, first and foremost, we are an integrator of drone detection technologies. So really what that means is, as a company, we go out to various manufacturers of these technologies. We'll meet with them, get their units or their hardware, and then deploy that out at our various service deployments. And from there, we're able to gauge and measure the pros and cons of each layer of technology, whether it makes sense to add to our utility belt, if you will, and really if it makes sense to recommend to clients like yourself. So how we do that is Aerial Armor, pre-COVID, and it's starting to pick back up again with events, but pre-COVID, Aerial Armor was the nation's largest service provider of drone detections as a service. So when you think of any, music festivals, so EDC, your Coachellas, your lights, concerts, various NASCAR or PGA events, red carpet things, think RNC, DNC. Generally, Aerial Armor was contracted to be out there at those events on site with our solutions and our staff to assist, whether it be security and or law enforcement, to create a awareness, if you will, or a network of drone detection ability for that event. So a lot of experience learned from those events, going out there, not just selling them, but actually using those. When we move to the opposite side of our business, this is where you're going to see permanent integrations. So you can think of places like correctional facilities or prisons, airports, critical infrastructure, think your airports, your ports, electric plants, think things of that nature. But we also have seen some additional use cases over the last year or so. So we've always had a fairly good relation with law enforcement, and we assist multiple agencies across the US with crime investigation. We're actually assisting various law enforcement agencies with counter surveillance. Believe it or not, various agencies have had their personnel followed home by drone. So we've been able to assist in those instances and help out. This year, with the rise of protests and riots, we had seen additional use cases of this technology being used by law enforcement to track the drone flights going over those various protests or riots. In any given instance, in some of those cities that you would see on the news, there was about 12 to 14 drones flying over. So it was pretty chaotic. And then, of course, drug trafficking. We do work with various agencies in the US and on the border to assist with drug trafficking using drones and helping them combat that. So a lot of different use cases here that Aerial Armor has gotten to deploy our solutions in. Taking a step back, when we look at the drone detection industry as a whole, it's important to note there is no silver bullet or one solution cure-all. It just doesn't exist at the moment. And for organizations that are trying to get as close to 100% as possible, they are having to do a form of layered solutions. So the technology that we'll be discussing today, and that first layer that all clients start with when they're just starting to set up a drone detection platform or network, is they will go with RF or radio frequency. From there, they'll move to a radar, and that's generally going to be at a more of a higher need area, so critical infrastructure, and then of course adding a visual or a camera element to track what that radar is seeing. For some agencies, again, this is a very, very small agency or small group of agencies in the US. They are allowed to use counter or mitigation tools like jamming guns or taking over the drone. We do supply those, but to the vast majority of people within the US or organizations within the US, counter or mitigation tools are still illegal at this point. So with that said, typically the reason why we will start off with radio frequency is that one, it's the most cost-effective solution on the screen here, but two, it's going to give you the most accurate and the largest amount of data that's coming in. So with that, Aerial Armor generally will launch the DJI Aeroscope G8. This solution here does a number of things that are pretty impressive. For starters, it does provide the GPS coordinates of the drone, real time, the takeoff point, but more importantly, we're going to be able to provide you with the GPS coordinates of the pilot or the operator's location real time. Again, it doesn't make sense trying to track a drone all around your property when we can indicate exactly where the operator is flying from so that you can go right to the operator versus chasing that drone. From the moment our solutions are turned on, it will collect and record all data. So you're getting drone serial number, you're getting flight speed, altitude, all of that information that you're able then to go back and search through historically. And you're able to do your forensic analysis to determine if these are operators that need to be watched or responded to. This is also the information if you're in an instance where you need to file a subpoena or a warrant, you would want that registration information that we're collecting to help you with that. Through the use of early warning capabilities, we're able to set up what are called alert zones. For some that may be familiar, they are basically geofences, but you're able to draw an area of interest, so say your property or property lines, and from there, anytime a drone breaches into those alert zones or those areas, we're able to send out a push notification directly to your email or to your phone directly, indicating that that zone has just been breached and telling you where that operator is at. That way you're not having to monitor the computer or the screen 24/7. You can really truly hone in when it matters. The average coverage range is fairly impressive. This again is based on geography, whether or not you have some higher mountainous terrain or whether it's flat land, but on average, we're seeing about a 12 to 20 mile range. Again, this is based on geography and RF traffic, but it's pretty safe to say that you would see that range unless you're in a fairly large metropolitan area with high sky rises. So yeah, so that should ultimately, and we can touch on this a little bit later, but that should fulfill most of the needs in terms of distance. And then on the last part, we like to talk about legality. So this one does pass the smell check on legality. Fortunately for DJI Aeroscope, every DJI operator that gets a drone has to go in and download the app to be able to even fly it. They have to register. And in that registration, they're actually consenting to the collection of that information via accepting the DJI privacy policy and terms of service. So before any of these flights are even tracked, this operator has already consented and signed off to the collection of this information. So ultimately, the DJI Aeroscope G8 is a powerful tool, and we'll show you some of that software here in just a moment. So what you're seeing on the screen now is Aerial Armor's proprietary software that was created not only for Aeroscope, but for multiple different manufacturers' devices. So we can assign not only an RF platform, but we can hook radar, camera, ADS-B for flights, which we'll go into in a moment. All of this data can be streamed into one common operating screen. And it makes it really easy to be able to manage everything from one place. So most of our clients will live from the live detections page. Keep in mind, this is a demo account with several sensors across the US that are part of our demo network or our threat assessments, and/or they are partners that have allowed us to share this data with you. So what you're seeing here is a few of our sensors that are set up currently with alert zones. And on the left, we're noticing we have some drones that are actively in the air. So we'll go ahead and click on this one that's indicating that we have a flight in the Denver area. And right now it looks to be that we have a flight just happening here on Lamar and 3rd Avenue. So utilizing that satellite function, we're able to really hone in and see not only where the operator is at across the street here, but where that flight is taking place. And think about this when you're looking at, the solution in terms of how you would use this at your own properties or at your own areas of interest. We have another one here that looks like it's up in the Minneapolis area. As we hone in, we're able to indicate exactly where that pilot is, most likely flying from his or her backyard, and that flight happening. On the left, there's a little bit of data coming in here, so we can see not only the type of drone, we can see the altitude that it's at 177 feet, speed, it's currently not moving. But from here, let's indicate that this is a drone that we want to watch. So we've seen this drone pop in, or there was maybe suspicious activity. We can easily click here and add this drone to a watch list. And what will happen is anytime that drone's operator powers on the remote control, you're going to get a notification that your watch list drone has just turned its drone on. You can also see this drone's specific history. You can add a comment. So let's say that you were to go out and talk to this operator, spoke with operator, right? Or black SUV sped off. Maybe you got some photos or anything. You're able to add these attachments, and then later on, you're able to go back and see all of these comments for those individual drones that you put in. So this is just an instance of how to use this software here. A few other things that I'd like to show you really quickly would be the integration of ADS-B. And if you're not familiar, ADS-B is a solution that tracks manned aircraft, registered manned aircraft. And we've gone ahead and we've implemented that solution directly into our software. And you're able to set up your altitude limit. So for now, we have it registering any flight that's at 6,000 feet or below is going to track. And this might be helpful if you're trying to, monitor flights that be going over, or maybe it's nighttime and you think it's a drone, but ultimately you're able to come into the software and see it's a commercial or a smaller plane that's registered. But from here, you can click on these flights that are happening real time. You can see their heading. More importantly, you can see that registration number if you need to, look up that flight if you had an incident with a flight. Those are just some of the ways to use this service here, or this page. I'm going to continue here, but again, there's quite a bit more that you can do as you start uncovering or undigging some of the solution here. So from here, I want to talk a little bit about alert zones, or those geofences that we spoke about earlier. So for this one, we're going to hone in on my home team, the Denver Broncos. They are a client of ours. They've permitted us to share a lot of their data with prospective clients here. But what they did was, their sensor can see good 20 plus miles, but they don't really care about all 20 miles, right? They have specific areas that are of interest. So what they've done is they've drawn a risk zone or alert zone around the actual stadium and the parking lot. That way they're notified anytime a drone enters or breaches that parking lot. But they've also gone ahead and put an exterior, a little bit easier to see it this way, exterior perimeter or alert zone around the outside. So what they've done now is they've got a sequence of events. So if they see a drone breaches this first perimeter, now they're on alert or a little bit heightened awareness. But once they've seen that same drone or that next alert come through that their critical area has been breached, obviously they're then activating their security teams to go and respond. There's a number of ways that they've learned with this technology how to set themselves up for success before and after the game. And I'll show you that a little bit later. But keep in mind, you can set up as many of these alert zones as you'd like, and you can get independent notifications for each one. So if you have a large area that you're trying to cover with multiple sites that are important to watch, you can set these all up individually with multiple zones and actually get notifications for each individual one. Now, whitelisting, obviously we'd be remiss to not think that some of our clients would end up having their own drones. This is completely fine. You're able to see all of your drone's flights, but we want to make sure that you're not getting alerts or alarms or panicking everyone in the building when an alarm goes off for a drone that is approved. So in here, you're easily able to input your own drone serial number, name it, and activate whether or not it's approved to be whitelisted or not. So if you ever maybe had a surveying company out there that was approved one day or 1 week, you would want to put them here. But of course, after that, you would want to deactivate that since they didn't have approval. Easy way to manage, friendly flights that are approved. The next thing I want to show you is honing in a little bit on a specific client and some of this data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up the Denver Broncos data, and I want to speak on that client for just a bit as well. So the Denver Broncos have been a client for a number of years with us, and when we initially met with them, they weren't too sure, honestly, if they had issues with drones. They had maybe seen one or two fly over, but we all know when they get up high enough in altitude, they become almost impossible to see to the naked eye. So they really didn't know the size or scope of the issue. They did agree and allow us to come out and do a demo for them initially. We uncovered some pretty startling information here and data, but I'm going to overlay a year's worth of the flight path for us here to indicate how many of those flights happen. Now, again, they've been clients of ours for a number of years, so the amount of data I'm about to show you is just 1 year of activity over the Denver Broncos Stadium. So what I'll do here is I'll start to overlay some of this flight information here. And as I do this, you're starting to see that they have quite an issue with drones. And as we get even further, it almost erases any visibility of the actual stadium itself. And when we're zooming out, we can see this really just further illuminates the growing issue here. And keep in mind, they have this data coming in limited to a 1/4 mile around the stadium. So we can see much further, but again, there's just too much going on outside of that and within it that they really don't care to monitor everything outside. So quite a bit of activity, right? So what we're able to do then is, let's say that we wanted to hone in, and we can just click on any one of these individual flights to see what had happened. But we can see that this was a Mavic 2 that flew up and over the stadium and back. The max altitude was 371 feet. Even better, we can come into any single one of those flights you just saw, those flight lines. We can click on it, and we can actually do an instant replay of the flight to show you everything that this drone operator is doing and this drone real time. Again, this is an 8-minute flight. I won't make us watch it all, but I wanted to point out that you can see the drone moving as it starts to move. You can see the altitude real time, and this can help you learn a little bit more about patterns or the way that people are flying in your area. So again, all of that is accessible from this software here, and you can easily hone in on any one of these individual flights. So would you be surprised to know that this is pretty much the same exact scenario in every major city that we see? It's really just a question of how much, not if you have issues with it. And in most cases, people really just don't know until ultimately you have a solution out there that can detect and monitor this stuff going on. So a couple other things I wanted to show you here. So what we're able to do is, let's say that we had a specific flight of interest or a flight that we wanted to really hone in on. We are able then to click into that flight. We can click the specific drone ID or serial number, and then we can come back to the software, go to drone details, and let's say ultimately this was a flight that you wanted to learn a bit more about. You want to know, has this person been around the property before? Are they, frequent offender? Really just pull me any data that our sensor has seen of this individual drone. So from the last year, this drone has been identified by our solution near that stadium 63 flights or 63 times. The total amount of flight, there's been a lot of flying, about 865 minutes. The max altitude is 389. And then again, all of those 63 flights are categorized here with the timestamps, the altitude, the speed. We can easily come in and replay this. You're seeing lines here. This would generally indicate, I would assume, a construction worker that is mapping out a new property. I'm also able to hone in on that because they have not flown over 400 feet, which is the legal ceiling for those drones to fly. But some other things we can learn. If you had ever posted a comment or a picture, which I showed you earlier, all of that would show here under that drone. But underneath, what we've done is we've broken out the patterns of that individual drone. So let's say that we want to know what days are these people or the specific drone flying over my property, right? We can easily tell you that primarily Tuesdays is generally the most popular day for this operator to fly near that property. The time of day, so midday, and then of course the max altitude that each one of those flights hit. And then below, we're able then to drop in every one of those individual flights. So you can really peel open the layers of this individual operator. Now, better yet, let's say that we want to be able to pull some of that same information, but we want to be able to pull it for a specific alert zone that you've set up. So let's say that you've had the solution and now you want to pull up your alert zones to say, how many flights have we had since the solution's been deployed, right? And what we'll do again is we'll just pull about a year's worth of flight information here for the Broncos. But since just last year in October, they've had 987 flights near or over the stadium. Unique drones, this is going to be how many individual serial numbers there were. There were 545. The max altitude was 1,598 feet. Again, I told you earlier, the 400 foot is the ceiling. This was well over that ceiling. The total amount of flights that were above 400 feet, 171. And of course, we break out night flights and some other information for you as well. So this information here may not be important for you, but for other clients, it can be. But we'll break down out of all of those 545 drones or 987 flights, what types of drones were each one. And better yet, we can actually take an entire zone and give you all of those patterns from this. So here we can tell you that primarily they're having most of their issues towards the back half of the day, maybe early evening, which would make sense. I think they've had a lot of the later games or later football games. We can see that they're primarily having issues on Sunday. Of course, looks like they have some other days that are a little bit higher, but Sunday being probably game day is generally their highest activity. We can see altitude, right? So we can break down just since the last year, they've had 8 flights over 1,400 feet, 4 over 1,200, 12 over 1,000. Obviously, I can keep going, but 21 over 800, and we break all of those patterns down for you. But better yet, we can also then take every one of those individual home points or takeoff points of the drones, and what they've used there at the Broncos Stadium is our heat map function. And what we can do then is we can overlay a heat map ability so that they can see exactly, over the course of a year, where are their problem areas, right? And what they were able to learn from this data is that primarily it's on the west side of their parking lot and on the south side. So what they've done now is they stage personnel or security in these areas before or after games so that they can respond to the operator very, very fast. Again, just some of the things that you can hone in on there. Really, the last thing that I'd like to touch on would be our alerting system here. So not only can you get email alerts, but let's be honest, emails can sometimes fall to the wayside. So what we did on our first iterance is Aerial Armor created our text notification or our SMS platform. So within each of those zones that we set up, you can assign 1 or 100 different phone numbers in there. And ultimately, the moment that zone is breached, anyone that's on your distribution list will receive the text that you're seeing here. This one says Aerial Armor Alert, the drone serial number and type of drone. For this one, we have North Phoenix, but you could say, parking lot A or B or C, however you see fit to name your zones. But underneath, you'll also get a link. If you click on that in your phone, regardless of what phone you have, it's going to open up Google Maps and show you exactly where the operator or pilot's location is at. So we ultimately developed that from being at some of our shows and having to play the telephone game, yelling across dispatch having to find the right person. It took a lot of time. So ultimately with this, anybody that needs to know or have that information gets it immediately and can be, can determine who needs or who is the fastest to be able to get there. Our second iterance is we did create the Aerial Armor app. And this application is available on either Apple or Android phones through your Google Play or Apple Store. But once you are in this app, you're able to see everything that you can see from that live detections page directly from your phone. And you're also able to set up push notifications from here. So ultimately, again, this was set up to eliminate any potential lag that might come by using the solution. And really, Patrick, that is most of what I wanted to cover. Obviously, we can get into pricing and some other things as well. But at this point, if we'd like, we can certainly open it up for questions.
Yeah, certainly, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. I see quite a few of you are active and listening. we have some questions that have already been submitted via text to me. Feel free, folks, if you're watching online, to also submit your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. That's always another very easy way to submit questions. So obviously, one of the first questions is talk about pricing and talk about fixed infrastructure at something like a ranch or a business. As you know, we our membership is pretty diverse in that. Yes, many of them own ranches and other rural facilities, but many of them also own businesses. So I wanted to have a conversation about infrastructure and cost, so that they can have a better idea of what's going out on their property.
Certainly. Yeah, let's hit infrastructure first, and then we'll jump right into costs. So infrastructure-wise, what you're seeing here is the G8 deployed in a temporary basis. So it is on a tripod, like a karaoke stand here. For permanent installations, you would of course install that permanently on top of your building or somewhere that has good line of sight or good height to it. Requirements, this needs standard outlet or 110 volt power. So it can plug into your standard outlet, and it would need data connection or an internet connection. Typically on some of our service deployments, we will launch this with a plug-in like LTE or cell phone stick that allows it to connect for internet. The amount of data that it needs is very, very minimal, but it does need to have an internet connection so that it can transmit what it's receiving to the software so that you can see that. So as far as infrastructure-wise, standard outlet or standard power and data connection, one way or the other, whether it be hardwired or a mobile stick plugged into it. And of course, we can send out more specifics on installation, what that looks like, but it's pretty straightforward. I know it looks complicated, but Jeremy, on average, when he's out at our installations or some of our other team members, generally have this up and running within about 15 to 20 minutes. And that's just running the power to the unit. So that is as far as infrastructure-wise goes. If there's more questions, feel free to ask them as far as that topic goes. Let's jump into pricing with you. So typically, I did not show the Aeroscope Mobile as it's not really a recommended solution here, but what we were focusing on is that next line, that DJI Aeroscope G8 system. With the system included is installation, as well as your first year of software and licensing fees, and that does come out at $46,000 total. After year one, so year two, we do have an annual license fee of $6,000 per year. But that is across the board. The price point is $46,000, and then of course $6,000 for your annual license fee after that. Now again, we are quite flexible. We understand that Texas Deer Association is a very large group, so we may, of course, be able to work out some preferential pricing for any member that is a part of the Texas Deer Association. So, but just keep that point or that price point as your baseline. And we will see what we can get done with Patrick and the association.
Thank you very much. Talk a little bit about your data again. Many of these are in very remote areas. So talk a little bit about what is needed in terms of data. Is it hardwired into like somebody's barn or house, or is it more utilizing a cell stick, something like that? Talk a little bit about how that would operate.
Yes, I mean, if a barn or house has internet already ran to it, it'd really just be a matter of running a Ethernet cable or a cord from your connection that's current to the Aeroscope. However, obviously in more remote areas or areas where they do not have an established internet connection, you can utilize or subsidize that with a Wi-Fi or a cell phone stick that would plug into the bottom of it via USB. And that can be done really through any phone provider. We generally, opt to pick Verizon over most, but other areas require, AT&T or T-Mobile are a little bit better. And I think y'all would know, what provider is best in your area.
Perfect. Talk a little bit about regulatory application. In many instances, either along the border or on our facilities, you may see law enforcement or agency drones being utilized. Is that data still allowed to be collected? And then also, will your system at least acknowledge that that is somehow law enforcement or private? Does it have that application, or does it just talk a little bit about all kind of that mix of law enforcement, regulatory application, et cetera?
Absolutely, and being that Jeremy's on the line, he's from our policy team, I'll probably let him take that question. However, just the back half of your question, the software won't indicate if it's law enforcement or non-law enforcement. It's just going to tell you that X drone is in the air and it's this type, it's flying here, and here's where the pilot or operator's location is. But Jeremy, if you'd like to speak a little bit more on the regulatory stuff that he had asked, feel free.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Josh. So, we've been doing drone detection for a number of years now, and the question always comes up is what's the legalities of it? The truth is that because DJI's Aeroscope is such a unique product where law enforcement or just your general hobbyist, anyone who's flying a DJI drone is accepting the terms and conditions of flying that drone means you will be detected. You are completely 1000%, within the ability to have this information. Now, with that being said, just bear in mind, there is nothing proprietary about this information either. You're not going to get the individual's name, the pilot's name, for example, or anything of that nature. If something comes up or an issue arises to where you need to take next steps, that's going to be the going through law enforcement, utilizing the serial number that you have in your system, and then allowing to partner with them for that next step. So with that said, it doesn't indicate whether that drone belongs to such and such or the next individual. However, you're able to mark, if you've got someone who's constantly in your airspace, you're able to watch list that individual to where you can start to get a history, and when it's time to take next steps, you have the info needed.
Perfect. Specifically in Texas, if memory serves me correctly, about 4, maybe 6 years ago, our state legislature, I believe, made private capturing of video of property illegal. In other words, if somebody's flying over your area and capturing video or still imagery, that is technically illegal. They can fly over it. They simply can't capture video. Is that still the case here in Texas?
So specific to Texas, I wouldn't know if that would still be in place. However, this allows you, the burden of proof is always on, the individual. So this allows you to have that, I guess, proof, have that ability to follow up and say, listen, I have several cases of this same drone coming over my property. It can't tell you whether the recording of video was turned on or off. However, you have the tools needed to take next steps, as where, most cases in this instance, if you see a drone out there wouldn't be a whole ton you can do, right? All you know is that, hey, there was a drone in the sky, not sure where the pilot was, but this serial number is really what ties that information back to give you that ability.
Perfect. Y'all, lastly, I'm gonna ask you to tell folks where they can gather more information. There's going to be a lot of people watch this later, and we certainly want to direct them to both more information about the systems that you're offering, and then a place where they can ask questions and get answers.
Absolutely. So for starters, aerialarmor.com is our website. You can get a lot of information there in terms of our software and a little bit about us. We do have a YouTube page, youtube.com/aerialarmor, where we've posted some videos where we've been out at various events like the Albuquerque Balloon Festival or things of that nature. And then, of course, you can always reach out to us directly at our phone number, which I can provide here as well after the call to everyone as well. So yeah, those are some of the ways that you can easily check us out, and we're more than happy to take any calls or emails and answer any questions in regards to that. There is something that we would like to throw out, but again, I think it'll be a conversation, Patrick, that you and I or the association and us have in terms of who would be available to use this, but Aerial Armor typically does have 1 or 2 units that we use for our threat assessments or doing a 2-week no-cost threat assessment. And really what that entails is allowing one of your locations or 2 of organizations to actually utilize an Aeroscope G8. We bring it out on a temporary basis, much like you're seeing on that tripod. We will provide data during that 2-week threat assessment in terms of your internet connection. We'll get that covered for you. But ultimately, we set the unit up. You're able to detect and monitor flights. And then during that, we'll collect that data and provide a detailed after action report. Keep in mind, we are limited in how many of these we have available, but we'd certainly love to make 1 or 2 of these available to the association and its members. So we can certainly have a conversation about that, Patrick, and you can let me know if there would be any interested parties in that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, Jeremy, Paul, thank you. That wrapped up the questions. A lot of those questions were about infrastructure. I certainly would love to gather up more information, and if we have some frequently asked questions once folks are able to view this online, I certainly might get you guys back out for a follow-up. But we'd also like to have you out at our show in February. I think this would be really interesting for folks. Again, that does the 5th and 6th of February here in Texas. We certainly would like to have this same presentation be put on, or something like it put on there for everyone to see, for all attendees to show up and be able to ask live questions as well. So guys, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close.
Patrick, that question, this is Paul.
Sure.
Is that going to be an in-person meeting in February?
It is. Yes, sir. It sure is. It's a Capri Resort, February 5th and 6th. And we expect about 500 to 1,000 people to be there.
Wow. Where was that again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Round Rock, Texas.
I've been there.
There you go. Listen, our staff will definitely be in touch about getting you guys out. And then again, for the members listening, we please share and tell everybody that this presentation is recorded, and again, it will be live here shortly. We'll get it up on our website, and we look forward to hearing your questions and feedback. Gentlemen,
awesome. Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.